Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for joining another Friday webinar with the Land app. Great to have you with us. For those that haven't met me, my name's Dan. I'm one of the directors at Land app, and I'm just going to spend the next 45 minutes or so giving you some top tips on how you can keep your data clean using the Land app, our mapping platform. As usual, this is a webinar, which means that your camera and microphone will remain off for the duration of the session, but that doesn't mean we don't want to hear from you. Please use the chat and Q&A function on the bottom of your screen to ask any questions you may have. We've got a bit of time after the webinar finishes to stay around, so if people want to have a chat and come off mute, there might be a bit of time to do that, depending on how quick I can get through things. And as the session is being recorded, we will be trying to get it up onto our YouTube channel as soon as possible. As usual, we do like to hear from you in terms of feedback. So once you leave the webinar, either at the end or if you need to shoot off early, please take 20 seconds just to answer 5 short questions. It just helps inform the direction of these webinars moving forward for us. So a bit of an agenda just to explain what we're going through today. We are going to just do a bit of an update from Land app. There's been a couple of product releases, for example, that I just want to make sure you're up to speed on. And then I'm just going to be doing a bit of a live demo around different elements of Land app where you have the opportunity to make sure you're doing good practice and keeping your data clean. And so we'll be looking at things such as mapping templates, how to name your maps correctly and your plans correctly, the use of folders, so just making sure your maps are tidy and keeping things organized. The toolbox, which is just a relatively new function of ours that allows you to be in control of making sure you're creating clean geospatial data. And I'll explain a bit more about that when I come to it. But on those toolboxes, just to flag, I won't be going through detailed workflows of how I've got to that point, but we do have a suite of webinars that you can look through on our YouTube channel if you're more interested in how I got to that point. If I've done a bit of a Blue Peter, here's one I prepared earlier type process. And then we're also going to look at print templates as well, and just making sure that you can keep those exports, those images or PDFs that you're creating through Land app as clean as possible. We will be, of course, hopefully saving 15 minutes at the end for Q&A. And so please use, as I say, the Q&A function just to ask any questions that can be about what I'm currently demonstrating, or more broadly, anything to do with Land app or the sector. We're happy to have a discussion. Our YouTube channel, if you just go onto YouTube and type in Land app, you should be able to find us. We've got lots and lots of webinars and resources on there, everything from roundtable discussions that we've had with expert panelists, workflows around countryside stewardship, biodiversity net gain, and a whole manner of other things. So hopefully you can find something in there that's relevant to yourself. So just very quickly, updates from Land app. We like to do these early on in the webinars just to make sure people are aware of the new things that are coming out. We did just release our April product update blog, and that includes a couple of the key things that the team have been working on behind the scenes. Just some highlights from me. This isn't everything, but one of the most requested features that we keep getting was just on the print template, the legend didn't allow you to have dashed lines. That is now visible, so you can see the difference between dashed lines and solid lines on your legend. We've released more data layers. We're on a bit of a data push at the moment, and some key ones, although again, not all of them. We've got the Ordnance Survey open green space, which actually I've got an image of here that just shows the location of various public spaces for you to go and enjoy, either in your local area or further afield. We've got the new England woodland creation sensitivity maps. So that's both the low sensitivity and the full sensitivity map. And that's relevant to anyone doing an England woodland creation offer, because the Forestry Commission have recently updated their guidance around fast tracking applications. And then finally, just an extra priority habitat layer is just around the wood pasture and parkland locations as well. That is for England only. And then finally, we've also been working behind the scenes on some more mobile app improvements. More are to come, so keep an eye out for that. But just what has been released is just we've got an offline mode now, so those with low signal or no signal can still use the app. And also we've done some bug fixing around the performance. But if you want to learn more, please just visit our website and visit the product update section, or go to the help center as well. So we're talking about keeping your data clean today, and I just want to talk through some key rules that I'll be hopefully sticking to throughout this demonstration. And I want you to go away from this webinar feeling more confident on what good looks like when you're using the Land app. These are just the 4 key elements that I'm going to hopefully hammer home, and there are a couple of other tips that will be dropped in throughout the session. But the first one is have one farm per map, or map, sorry, per farm or per holding. And what that means is if you're working with a client or you are, a landowner yourself, try and avoid to have multiple different maps that represent the same area. Instead, having one source of truth that multiple people collaborate on means that we get that more dynamic sharing, working off, each other's progress rather than sharing copies of the data. And that map, to be consistent, should be named following a similar structure to this, like the farm name and a surname, so Manor Farm and Smith. Using folders is a really nice way to keep your mapping interface clean, and I'll demonstrate that at the moment, but it allows you to organize the data that you're creating within Land app in a bit more of an auditable way. So if you are, for example, doing regular updates for habitat assessments, or you've done an application to a certain team, you can use those folders to start filing away different years. So 2022 claim, for example. Alongside those folders, you also can use the archive function as well, which I will show you in a moment, but that's just a way of removing the data from your map entirely. So rather than having it in a folder, if it's an unnecessary layer, we do have an archive function that means you can almost hide the data from that map, but retrieve it at a later date if you so wish. The third one, which I'm definitely going to be hammering home, is just using templates within Land app. And what I mean by that is within Land app, we've got different templates that follow scheme structures. So before you start mapping, asking yourself, what am I trying to map? And is there a template to suit that? Means that your data will be structured in a way that's accessible further down the line. And so we have templates for countryside stewardship, sustainable farm incentive, UK habitat mapping, and the list does go on, and I will show those a bit more. And within those templates, and again, I will show that in a moment, you have the ability to do something called assign use. And what that means is when you've drawn something on the map, rather than just labeling it saying this is woodland, this is a pond, you can actually assign the use of that feature to a woodland or to a pond. And I'll explain in a moment why that's important. And the final one is just around consistency of your naming convention. So when you're creating data, coming up with a bit of a structure for how those maps are named and how those plans are named will just mean it's a lot easier in the longer term to find data that you previously created. We still see a lot of people with maps that are called new map 1 and plans that are just called BPS or just called stewardship. And by labeling them following this structure, template type, farm name, surname, for example, allows you to have a consistent way of filing away that data. So those are the kind of 4 key rules. Like I said, I'm going to drop in some more throughout the demo as well. And during the demo, I'm going to touch on the mapping template, show you some naming conventions, show you the folders, I'm going to touch on some of those toolboxes that I've mentioned, and then go through to the print templates. So very quickly, for those that are new to us, just to touch on, we're a web-based mapping platform at thelandapp.com. The team, including Kathy, who's on the call today, put a lot of effort into the website. So if you've got 5-10 minutes, come and have a little click around. We've got different sections. I would highlight the community section where there's case studies, blogs, product updates, etc., that you can read up on what we're doing in the wider land sector at the moment. You can create an account for free. So what I'm going to be demoing today is mostly free functionality. Where there is a paid functionality or something that's required to be on a subscription, I will try and make that clear. But most of the things I show you today are part of our free product. We don't want price to be a blocker for people to get involved in the digital mapping revolution that's happening at the moment. Creating a free account is easy. You just hit the sign up button at the top or hit the get a free account button in the middle of the page. Once you've first logged into Land app, you'll be met with what's called a maps homepage. And depending on how much you've used Land App will dictate how many maps you can see. But this is the first point I just want to touch on around data cleanliness and making sure that what you're doing is clean and ordered, particularly if you're part of a wider team. So the first thing to say is, each of these thumbnails represents one holding. So that can be a particular farm, a particular state, a particular parish that you're working with. And that one map can contain all the different layers that you're creating for that one particular area. Within those maps, what you can do if you're on a subscription, and so just to talk about one of the subscription functions for the moment, is you can assign what are called team tags. Team tags allow you to create sub-teams within a single organization that allow certain individuals only to see certain maps. And so what that allows you to do is really grow the organization. We've got accounts that have got 300 plus users all within one entity. But what they are doing is they're using tags to filter and clean that data so I can only see relevant things to myself. Those can be used as filters. So I've got loads of different filters that I could apply based on either people, location, sector, or whatever the maps are trying to reflect. And obviously for today, I'm showing the demo. For getting those set up, just very quickly, you can do that within the account settings if you're a subscriber by hitting the account button and coming across to teams. And it's within here that you can start to create these different teams that can be associated to both people, so the users or members within your team, but also the maps they're creating. Only when there's a match between the team tag and the map does that user see that data. So it's a good way for an administrator, for example, to hide certain maps that might be private to certain teams. The second thing then is around the naming convention of the maps. So you can see here, I've got some random ones that I'm not quite practicing what I preach during this. So what I'm going to do is just rename this keeping data clean map just to follow consistent naming convention. And I can change the name of my map by hitting the three dots and edit and updating the map here. So what I would recommend, as I said, is farm name or estate name _ surname. So my surname is Geerah. And then you can obviously have extra bits of information if you so wish, like keeping data clean, which is my example. By doing that, particularly when you're in a team, it makes it easy to search the maps because you can use the search bar when you are searching for things. So I would then be able to search for the name Geerah, for example, and it would load up all the maps relevant to myself. So I'm going to come into a map now. And like I said, I've done a bit of a Blue Peter. Here's one I created earlier just to show you some of those key elements. The first thing I just wanted to quickly show you is just some of those data layers. So I'm going to just search for green space, and you can see the two different green space layers that we've now integrated. And when you zoom in, those green spaces load up for you like so. One of the layers is just the polygons. So you can see they're all colored depending on what they are. This is a public garden, a public park or garden, and this is a sports facility, and this is a cemetery. And so there's about 8 or 9 different types of green space that Ordnance Survey has mapped. And that data is interactive, i.e. you can right click on it and copy it onto a particular plan. So if you're creating a local park strategy, for example, you can use the outline of that green space to start creating your plan. Alongside that, you can see that we've got these little points. And if I just turn off the polygons, these are all the access areas. So how do you get into that particular park or cemetery or green space? There's just the location of the entrance point, the access point for that particular park. So together they give you quite a nice picture of the local green space, but also how do you get in there? Where's the entrance point? If they don't have a point associated with them, you can assume that it's entrance all over. Other data layers, just to quickly show you, is the UCO sensitivity map, which I just put on the low sensitivity for now. But these are all the different locations across England where the Forestry Commission is deeming woodland planting to be low sensitivity, i.e. that there's low likelihood of impact to the environment or to other schemes as well. Obviously subject to application, but it's just a nice way of starting to steer where on my farm or estate may woodland planting be most suitable. And we'll be doing a webinar soon about UCO, so do keep an eye out on that once we're ready. So that's just some of the updates, just wanted to make you aware of while we are starting to create maps. So the first thing I want to do is I'm going to go across to this land registry parcel. So I've basically uploaded 3 maps like so. And what I'm going to do is just firstly show you that naming convention, which is how do I name those plans on the left-hand side to follow the screen structure. Sorry, making sure I'm naming them correctly. So the first thing I want to do is I want to go to the left-hand side, and I've got 3 random plans here just to show you what maps could be there. So I've got a land registry parcel, I've got England woodland creation, and I've got a countryside stewardship, but they're all named a bit randomly at the moment. And so what I want to do is just to make sure that I'm naming them correctly and follow that principle that I just put on the screen, which is you can click the 3 dots next to my land registry parcel, for example, hit rename, and instead of just calling them land registry parcels, I'm going to call them ownership boundary or boundary underscore farm name underscore surname. Obviously, you don't need to write that. You can actually say what the farm name is. I'm going to do exactly the same for my UCO, my England woodland creation. I'm going to hit rename. I'm going to do UCO farm name underscore surname. Actually, just to save me time, I'm going to copy that. Done. And then do exactly the same for my countryside stewardship. So by doing that, what I've now got is I've got a consistent naming structure for my plans. So it's a really good thing to do in the longer term, just to make sure you're naming them to include the type of template, which I'll come on to in a moment, but also just in terms of who's that relating to. If you're unsure what template it is, just to make you aware, we've introduced fairly recently this button called Plan Details. And by clicking Plan Details, you can see what template is being used. So I can see that for this particular template is blank. I can see for this particular template, it's using the woodland creation template. Okay. So with templates, and that's where I'm going to start now, is they're the important thing when you first start creating data, first start creating maps. And just for a demonstration, I'm just going to create an ownership boundary using the ownership boundary template. So you can see that workflow, but it'll give me a chance to explain what the templates do. The first thing I want to do is hit new. The second thing I want to then hit is use template. And what this is doing is this is LandApp asking you, what are you trying to map before you start doing the mapping? And you're met with this list of thumbnails that you can scroll through. And these are all the different templates that we host. Like I said, following different schemes like basic payment, sustainable farm incentive, countryside stewardship, woodland creation, etc. As a note, the list is filtered by what sector you chose when you first create an account. So depending on what sector you are, the order of the list will change. And the reason for that is we've just put in a bit of logic that puts the ones most relevant to that sector at the top of the list. However, obviously, if that doesn't quite suit you, please just change and update the drop down. And if you want to see all of the templates, sorry, if you just change your sector to other, you get a complete list of all the templates. Each of these templates then have followed government schemes or other schemes. And so when you're using them, it will force you to choose from a predefined list of drop downs. So what I want to do is I'm going to do an ownership boundary just to show you how that works. And I'm finding the ownership boundary template. I'm then going to choose my import method. So as a reminder, there's different ways you can get data onto the land app. For an ownership boundary, we'd highly recommend using the land registry data. And by hitting that and zooming in a little bit, all of the different polygons that relate to the land registry will load. And you can then simply click on the polygon or polygons that are relevant to that particular boundary that you're trying to create. And that starts to form that boundary of interest. You hit next once you've chosen the ones you want. And remember, we are then going to update the name, boundary, farm, name, surname. And I'm just going to add this as 2024, just an extra bit of information. So now what I've got is I've got an ownership boundary that's named correctly, allows me to understand what I'm currently mapping. This obviously then you can edit however you wish, but the main thing we want you to consider is assigning a use to what this represents. And so we're doing an ownership boundary. I'm basically wanting to assign the use of all of those features to an ownership boundary, which for this template doesn't quite seem visual because there's only one option you can apply on an ownership boundary, and that is the ownership boundary code. But when you start using stewardship or basic payment, etc., or UK HAB, there are hundreds of codes you can choose from by selecting the feature and hitting that assign use button. And I'll come on to that in a moment with a different template. Obviously, for keeping your data clean, you may also want to change the styling of this. So don't feel like you have to be restricted to the red line boundary. You know, for ordnance, for land registry, what I do like to do is firstly select all by hitting the select feature type. I do then like to merge them together. I really want just a clean red line boundary, like so. I like to merge them together. And what that has then done is that's created a single shape out of those 7 or 8 shapes that I was illustrating. I also maybe want to change the styling, so I can maybe put a bit of an opaque feel to it and maybe change the width of the border, for example, like so. And that is now colored it in a little bit and change that border width that I can add a label to. As you can see at the moment, this data I wouldn't deem as clean. And the reason for that is I've got these little fragments of data that are currently in the middle of my ownership boundary, which can be quite, annoying, particularly when you're doing a print. The reason for this is the data that the land registry holds isn't perfectly aligned in some places. So in this location, that data is not quite flush. And so I want to quickly show you how you can tidy up these little fragments to make sure that your map is clean. The first thing you want to do is you want to draw a new shape to kind of erase out that block by hitting draw area, and then just simply drawing a very rough area to engulf all of those different lines that you want to get removed. I'm going to leave that as a bit of road, like so. It's a very arbitrary area that looks like this. Double click to finish, and what that's done is that's now drawn a shape on top of where those errors are. The next thing I want to do is then hole punch or subtract that red box from the yellow by hitting that. And you can see by hitting OK and subtracting it, all of those little fragments have gone. And then the third step is you then just merge those 2 layers together. And so what I've done is I've ironed out those fragments to now give me a clean boundary for that area with no fragments in the middle. And just to show you that with this one, just once more, draw, hit area. There's also actually probably be a bit more specific. So over here, get those out of the way. Very arbitrary area, like so. Finish, subtract, and then merge. You can see you can quite quickly tidy up those, and now I've got a bit more of a cleaner boundary. One final thing for the boundary before I move on to some other tools is that we do have what's called a T mark. When I first joined LandApp 3 years ago, this is one of the most requested functions. And what a T mark does is it allows you to drop these little T's to reflect what side of that red line boundary you're currently mapping. The reason that's important is if you're zoomed in on a particular map or maps, like so, it will tell you what side of the red line you're referring to, particularly if you're zoomed in on that print. Obviously, you can make the T marks probably neater than I can, but it means when I'm printing this, for example, the T marks are reflecting what side of the boundary I'm mapping. Okay. That's ownership boundaries. The final kind of general tool I want to show you that's very relevant to this boundary is what's called fixing geometry. And this is probably the most technical part of the whole demonstration. So please, if this goes over your head, please don't worry. But there are instances where the land registry data can have broken geometry. And what I mean by broken geometry is you may have areas that overlap like this, where they're what's called self-intersecting. And so at this point, the geometry for that particular feature is broken, or it's not functioning, which for day-to-day mapping isn't something to worry about. But you may get asked, for example, by your team internally that there's a bit of broken geometry. How do I fix it? And so what I want to show you is a tool that we've released that can be accessed within your boundary file under the toolbox, and it's called the Geometry Fixer. And it simply just repairs any broken geometries for your plan. And so I'm just going to demonstrate that by running it. And what that will do is it will just flag up to me, the end user, where there's a broken geometry, and it will try and fix it for me as well. It takes about 5 seconds to run, and then you just do need to refresh your screen. And you can see what I've been returned now is I've got my boundary. I've got my valid boundary. So it's fixed the boundary and fixed the geometry of these. But what it has also done is it's just flagged up where there's issues and which part of the plan has issues as well. But now this valid plan for your GIS team, hypothetically, that's fixed now for them. Obviously, it's a bit broken because I made a big mistake. And I can hold A on my keyboard to repair that if I want. Okay, so that was just the geometry fixer tool. So again, please don't worry about geometry fixing if you're not asked. But if someone asks you, hey, you've got broken geometry, you now know that Dan's told you can fix it within LandApp. The second thing I now want to show you is folders. And it's very relevant because I've got lots of plans on here. And trust me, I've seen some maps that have got hundreds of plans going down that left-hand side, and they're not using the folder structure. So I just want to quickly show you now how you can use folders to tidy up this left-hand side and just make it feel a bit more organized and neat. You can create a folder by hitting this folder icon at the bottom left-hand side of your screen. That then comes up with a little pop-up that says create a new folder. And you can call it whatever you like, but I'm going to call it Boundary Files 2024. Boundary Files 2024. And what that's done is that's now created an empty folder on the left-hand side. So there's no data in this at the moment. But what I can do is I can click on any one of my plans and hold and drag and drop that file into the boundary files. And so I've got two boundary files on here. See, bring them both into boundary files. And I'm also going to bring in my valid boundary files. And so this is now a folder that I can move and open and collapse to see the different data that's contained within it. The benefit of using a folder isn't just to make it look tidy, is then you get bulk actions for that whole folder. So that whole folder, for example, can be renamed, published and unpublished. So we won't touch on that today, but we do have a function called map of maps that you can publish data. You can hide and show en masse. So you can see that I can hide all of the boundary files. I can show all my boundary files at once. So it just allows you to do that. And you can lock an entire folder. So that what that means is I can lock all of the plans that are within that one folder to stop any of my team editing them. If you want to, keep data safe, really nice example if you've got a countryside stewardship from 2021 that's all nice and clean, put it in a CSS 2021 folder and lock the folder to stop other people editing it and obviously changing it. And I can unlock as well. So hopefully that just shows you folder structure, keeps it nice and neat. And actually, let me just continue that for a little bit. CSS application 2024, for example, and I can put in my CSS plan, and I'm going to make one more called UCO application 2024, and I'm going to put my UCO application in. Okay, so I've now got these three folders that contain my boundaries, my stewardship, and my England Woodland creation. The other thing to say is that I've got two files on here, two plans that actually I don't need anymore. I don't want the issue location for my broken geometry, nor do I want my invalid geometry. That's all stuff I can archive. And so if you don't want them to be in a folder, you don't have any need for them, you can click the three dots and hit the archive button. And what that does is that just asks you, are you sure you want to archive it? You will always be able to unarchive it in the future, but at least then we just get it off your map, archive again. And now my layers or my plans on the left-hand side are looking a lot neater than having loads of different maps. All of them are called something different and they're stored in different ways. If you do ever need to retrieve an archive folder, you can hit this archive button at the bottom left, and it tells you all the plans that you previously archived, and you can simply unarchive them by hitting this button here. You can see I've unarchived that valid plan. Okay. Cool. So that's kind of folder structure. A bit about the template. I'm going to talk a bit more about them now, but how you can really name those layers correctly to start getting this tidy left-hand panel. Really important, particularly if you're a land agent or a professional sharing this map with your client. It makes you look a lot more professional if you name them, use folders, and educate those end users on how to access that. Great. So what I'm going to do next is just talk a bit more about plan templates. So I've, again, a bit of a Blue Peter moment. I've created a fake countryside stewardship here. Not perfect yet. If you do want to learn more about countryside stewardship or any of those other schemes, please check our YouTube channel. But what I want to do now is just show you a couple of top tips when you're building any of these schemes on how to keep your data clean. So the first thing to say is that plan template that I've chosen to show you for this demo is the countryside stewardship template. That's the existing scheme, although we've obviously got news, awaiting news from DEFRA about what the future of stewardship looks like with the Sustainable Farm Incentive. But this countryside stewardship template just hopefully will guide you through what options are available to you if you're applying for that scheme. I've now got my map on and I've started applying and assigning codes. So just to show you that stewardship template, when I hit change now, rather than just having that ownership boundary, I've got all these different categories of things I could choose, and I can start to get a full list of all the different stewardship codes available to me, such as creation of grass features, a grassland for target features, etc. Why it's important for stewardship or UKHAB or SFI is we can also include extra bits of metadata in that right-hand panel that give you more information about that theme. So for example, I've changed this to GS14. I know then the payment rate for that particular option is £528. And then the annual values, the annual revenue I'm getting paid or my client's getting paid is basically that value times by the total hectarage. And each of these options have different payment rates. So if I just updated it, for example, to a GS4, the payment rate is dropped down to 382 and therefore the values drop down as well. So by using the template, you're getting that insight as an end user around the different payment rates associated to that plan. In countryside stewardship and sustainable farm incentive, we also include the guidance hyperlink as well. So you can get a direct hyperlink into the .gov website that shows you the guidance for that particular option from the Rural Payments Agency guidance page. Here we go, our full screen. Okay. So yeah, by using templates, you get your insight, you get the data structure, and you get the additional guidance and payment if we've got it. The other benefit of these templates, and just to show you hypothetically, if I made all of these AB6, for example, and I change them all, what I can do is I can generate a report because my data is clean, because I've used the Land App template, because I've been mapping following that stewardship structure. I not only get those payment rates, but I can actually go into this reports button and ask Land App to summarize my countryside stewardship template. So my CSS, farm name, surname, and I get a breakdown of all the different options I've chosen based on the hectarage or the length of that particular intervention and what percentage of my farm that covers as well. Without templates, this would be impossible because people would be misspelling, different codes, using capital letters where they don't. But because we're forcing you as users to, choose options and assign the use of those options, that data is in a format that's really easy to interrogate and summarize like this. And so I get a nice report for the countryside stewardship plan that I've generated. Another top tip then for any, and this is relevant to any, I'm going to keep on the countryside stewardship thread for the moment. When you're drafting schemes, there's a couple of tools within Land App that really help you keep your data clean. The first one I want to show you is what's called snap to line. And the snap to line function allows you to use the shape of an existing feature without you manually having to draw a particular option, without manually having to draw a certain thing. So a prime example is, putting a fence around the outside of this field. Okay, I'm going to turn off snap to line just to show you what that would look like first. The snap to line is this little icon here. If I went to draw a fence around the southern edge of this field, the fence I would try and draw would look like this. Okay, which isn't perfect. It's still pretty good, but you can see to get it perfect to follow the shape is quite difficult. And that's quite a, angular line. And I'm just going to move it out the way just so you can, that could be my fence. Or if I use the snap to line function, so I have this snap option on, which by the way, is by default is turned on for you. I just disabled it. And then I hit draw line and then start here and finish here, you can see that Land App is automatically snapping the shape of that line to the edge of that feature. So now, one, it's quicker, but two, it follows the exact shape of the Rural Payments Agency design. If I assign both of these just for now to fencing, FG2, for example, you can see the quality of the line that I've generated here is far higher than the quality of the line that I've generated here. So using that snap line function, particularly when you're tracing elements, is a really nice tool to use. Taking that one step further, you don't always have to snap to line for the shapes that you've drawn. We have got a function for our Ordnance Survey customers. So if you're buying the data credits or you're a license holder, you can also trace the shapes that are on the map behind. So hypothetically, I want to trace the outside of this woodland block, for example, as part of my stewardship application. What I can do is I can turn the interactive map for this base map on. So it's by default off. Turn that on. Now, when I go to draw an area, what LandApp is doing is it's tracing for me again. You can see it's picking up the shape of that Ordnance Survey master map to give me the exact shape of that particular patch. That works with both lines as well. So if I wanted to trace the outside of this track, you can see that I'm tracing the base map, which means that the lines that I'm drawing are following Ordnance Survey's data exactly. You're not having to manually work out where that line is. You're using the OS base map to trace onto your countryside stewardship application. And so the top tip and takeaway from that is try where possible to avoid drawing your own shapes. Use existing shapes. Start tracing, use the field boundaries or the interactive Ordnance Survey map if you wish as well. Those shapes as well can be, given a code, whatever that might be. Management of hedgerows. I don't know what that is. That's just woodland improvement. You can trace and make the data nice and clean. Okay, so the final thing I want to show for data cleanliness, and I appreciate this has been a bit of a, well, compared to usual, a bit more ad hoc demonstration, but hopefully you're learning a lot from it anyway. The final thing I want to show you is just another set of tools that we've released that support your stewardship or your UCO application. And so I've demo just a bit of a change of scenery. I've created an example woodland creation plan. And please do look at our webinar around England woodland creation if you're interested. I just wanted to get you an example of what a woodland plan looks like. So what I've got here is I've got a woodland creation template. So I've used the woodland creation template. I've used our England woodland creation offer tool. And I've got to a point where I'm happy with the woodland plan that I've created. And so what I have created is, I'll put a label on for those as well. I've got some wooden field gates. I've got my area for native broadleaf planting. I've got an area for productive conifer, and I've also got a bit of chemical bracken control. What we've built, and this is exactly the same for countryside stewardship, but what I'm showing will work for both UCO and countryside stewardship, is the ability for you to run that area through a validator. And that validator doesn't mean that we're going to pick up all of the mistakes that may have happened, but we at least indicate where mistakes are likely to have happened and fix them where we can. And an obvious example of a mistake that happens with UCO is that you try and plant woodland on existing woodland, or you try and plant woodland on a road. So you can see what I've done just to make a purposeful mistake. If I've got a road going down here, existing woodland here, I've said that I want to plant woodland there. And the other thing that people, tend to do is when they're drawing, the capital items, is they may have the wrong field ID, or they may make a mistake in terms of planting that fencing or hedgerow out of the right location. So just to demonstrate that for my validator, I'm just going to make a very obvious mistake, which I hope none of you would do, and just draw a fence line like this. What you can do is once you've completed that plan, you can go back into that toolbox, the same place with the geometry validator, and you've got this UCO validator tool, which will validate any woodland creation plan that you've created and just update the map to make sure that you haven't made any obvious mistakes and flag those issues to you. I'm going to hit run, and that will probably take 10 seconds, and you will be emailed with a notification once it's ready. And just to show you while that's running in the background, my stewardship, I can run that validator through the toolbox as well and validate my stewardship. Both of them go through quite a lot of complex things behind the scenes, but we're hoping the output is digestible to you, where it flags the error and it tells you what error you've made, whether that is putting a grassland option on an arable field, for example, or trying to plant woodland on a triple SI. Refresh my screen. Hopefully. Yeah. So I've now been served these 2 extra plans. I'm just going to hide my woodland, and my UCO, just going to hide the error. So firstly, I've got this plan that's called valid. And what it's done is it's cleaned up the edges of my plan. So remember that original one, I basically took off and made some extra woodland planting outside of my ownership on a road. The valid plan has tidied that up. I clipped away the area of mistake, and it served it in this invalid plan. So you can see what it's returned. It's returned two little features for me. Return this invalid block because the area is outside of my SBI number, i.e. I'm trying to plant woodland outside of my ownership. I don't have permission to do that. And the same with this, it's trying to get a bit of fencing outside of my area of interest for my ownership. And it's these tools, we hope, that will allow you, when you're doing the mapping, to have a bit more confidence in the maps you're created are following the rules that have been set by that particular scheme. So it will update field numbers. So actually, I don't know if this is across two fields. I don't think it is. It will update your field numbers just to make sure you've applied the right field IDs to each of those options. And it will double check where you've got potentially invalid features for a whole manner of reasons. So please do watch either our stewardship webinar to see a bit more about the stewardship validator, or watch our England Woodland Creation webinar to see a bit more about how the England Woodland Creation tool will help you keep your data clean. And I think for now, that's everything I wanted to cover, I believe. Let me just double check my list. Oh, it was print templates. Sorry, bear with me. Three minutes before Q&A can start. So just to show you the final output then of keeping data clean is that you can print data. So obviously I'm going to just quickly whiz through how I would create a map for this particular area. I'm actually going to use my official application because that's got the slightly more better labeling. I'm going to turn off the wooden gates, and I'm just going to make a text point for wooden gates to make it clean. So by using labels as well as text points, you can actually make slightly more bespoke labels, keep the map a bit tidier, particularly when you've got lots of different labels in a short area like I have. There we are. So I've got a bit of a label, and I'm just going to turn off this one as well for now and get rid of this dodgy line that no one wants. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to print this map, new frame. So that just means a new area of interest. And I'm just going to make this fairly quick so you can just see how, rather than the training session, just see how quick I can make a print. Centralize that, change the border to narrow, customize my print. And in here, I can change a whole manner of things like the base map and the quality. But the main thing I wanted to show you is you can obviously spend time adding a header, adding your logo, adding a legend, which does take time. So you can add header, UCO, insert, add logo, drag and drop it, insert, etc. However, I'm just going to put that there. However, when you first create that template, you can actually save that template. So when you come back to print another scheme, so say another UCO application, I can look through all of the different templates that I saved in the past. I'm hoping there'll be a UCO one in here. Example UCO. So you can see now basically imported, sorry, my previous template that follows the structure of that previously saved map. So right when you're printing multiple stewardship plans or UCO plans, if you're on a subscription, you can save the template and come back to it. So it's all formatted exactly as you want. The legend looks the same, the logo looks the same, and all of the labels at the bottom and the top, the headers and footers stay the same as well. And so by doing it once, you can then use it multiple times. As a note, you can't share that template with your team at the moment. So it's just you as an individual, even if you're in a bigger organization. It is something that we've discussed with the product team, potentially possible, but there's just some other priorities at the moment. Okay, that was everything I wanted to cover. So I will come across to the chat function or the Q&A function if there's any questions. But actually, it looks like we've got a fairly quiet audience, which either means that's covered everything or the Q&A function is not working. So if there's any questions, please pop them in the chat or in the Q&A and I can cover them. If not, we can, I guess, slowly round off the webinar. Yeah. Is the Q&A function working? That's the big question. If someone can just ask a random question, just say hello in the Q&A if it's working. If not, we've we've probably made a bit of a mistake. Oh yeah, Leah. Thank you, Leah. Good to see you there. The chat's working. Okay. So just I assume then we've got no question. Colin, thank you for joining. Hopefully that was useful. Like I said, it was a bit of a whistle-stop tour of some key functions rather than any particular workflow, just more around good practice, how you can use the different things in LandApp to make sure that you and your team are consistent. But if you really do want to get under the skin of any particular, end-to-end process, stewardship, UCO, creating an ownership plan, DNG, all of that stuff, check our YouTube channel, because that's definitely where you're going to get the more detailed overview. You seem to have a little tab. Okay, so Vincent, I don't quite understand Vincent's question about the seem to have a little tab above. But a question from David. I'm just keen to understand if export options are going to change, please. So yeah, we've got two different ways to export, well, actually three different ways to export data, David. So I'll just give you an update of what they are now and what we're planning to do moving forward. The first thing is you can export the geospatial data. And so the geospatial data is the shape files or the CAD files. You can export this plan, and you can do that by hitting the export button and downloading any one of those geospatial file formats. As a note, the GeoJSON is the most structured and stable version because that's what LandApp is built on. KML is what you use for Google Earth. So if any of you are using Google Earth, you can export your LandApp data and put it into Google Earth using KML. Shapefile is for ArcGIS and Esri, and you can export data there. As a note, we've got a bit of a bug that we're just looking at, that at the moment that only exports polygons, i.e. it won't have exported the hedgerows that I drew as lines or any other points like the gates. So we're just working on improving that. And the DXF is the CAD file format, which for architects doing building planning, etc., is the format they use. That's one export type. The second one is the Excel version. So you can come into the table view of my country stewardship, for example, and I can download to Excel this full breakdown of my stewardship. So I get a row by row, field by field, feature by feature breakdown that I can export to Excel, which is the second one. And the third one is then the print functions, which allow you to export the data as an image file or a PDF. There's three main ways you can export data. And in terms of the improvements, yeah, the shapefile is one. And we've also got these other exporters as well, like a biodiversity net gain auto populator, where you can export your plan or even UCO. You can export it in the format of the application itself. So hopefully, David, that's answered your question, which is useful. The little tab. Oh yeah, sorry, yeah. In terms of refreshing, Vincent, yeah, thank you. Yeah, it was hidden on my full screen. ISO XML would be good. Okay, Kathy, can we make a note of ISO XML as a format? I guess that's for David. Is that a geospatial format? We'll do a bit of research, but thank you, David. If you could let us know what the use case for ISO XML in your instance would be, that would be useful. A question in the chat just around free printing. Yep, so free printing. OpenStreetMap is a free print, so you can use this base map instead of a Ordnance Survey one for free. But just be aware that that is a crowdsourced data set, so it's not always perfect. And as of today, we've heard a couple of instances where people are updating the map kind of in random, rogue, cranky type of way. So please be aware and just double check that the map is correct. You can report any errors to OpenStreetMap via the OpenStreetMap website. It's not a data set that LandApp creates. We just host it. So please, you can use it for free. It's a non-licensable product. But we're not in control of what's contained within it, nor is Ordnance Survey. But yeah, that is free for you to use, Susan. You can see that it's a free map. For the Bing in the map box, they're a free base map to scroll around. But when you print, there is a nominal fee. I think it's £2 per map or £3 per map, regardless of your scale. So yeah, £2.40 for me because I'm on a subscription. So I think it's £3 if you're a free user. Question. So from Leah, yeah, having export problems with export, keep saving as a PDF. So Leah, can you just let us know what file, what are you trying to export? Is it the geospatial data you're trying to export that's saving as a PDF, or you, because the print should save as a PDF, so that sounds right. But if maybe we can pick it up in our support channel, Leah, and unless you've already spoken to the team. How can I see the refresh button on my screen? Okay, sorry, yeah. Refresh is in your web browser. It's not part of Land App. It's actually, I'm on Google Chrome, and then the refresh button is here. Okay, yeah, Leah, I will make sure the team come up with an answer for you. I'm not aware of that issue, so I will have a look, and hopefully we can find a resolution for you. Okay, we're a little bit early, but I think, unless Kathy, I've missed anything. I think that's everything. And yeah, David, thank you. The IS XML is a tractor cab integration. So we've actually behind the scenes built some proof of concepts with a couple of tractor providers. So perhaps if you just drop us a message in the support, and you can drop us a quick message, send us a message, and just let us know what tractor provider you are with, because we've already got some ways of exporting the data ready for use in tractor cabs. Okay. Well, thank you so much for all of your attendance. And like I said, this session has been recorded. Hopefully you've learned something new, and please answer the feedback when you leave. It just helps steer mine and Kathy's decision when we're putting on the next webinar. Have a fabulous weekend, and we will catch up soon.